Okay, Nick and Andy, the January transfer window is fast approaching. It feels like it's going to be huge this year, right, Nick? I mean, it's so tight up and down the table. Teams will feel like, if we just make two decent additions here, we could make a big change to the outcome of our season. Do you expect it to be a little bit busier than it has been? Because it's been a quieter window in the last few years.
Well, I sure do, because one of the richest teams in the world needs help in a pretty big way. And guess what? Every team in the world knows that richest team in the world needs help. And so I just think Manchester City is the focus of this window. I know we're very tempted to write them off, and I almost want to. He's so good. And if he's not, Pep Guardiola is not often tasked with, well, why don't you get a guy who can do just this? And that's what he has right now. And if it is simply a matter of finding someone, whether they have Premier League experience or not, who can be a 70% Rodri for him, then I just don't see why it can't happen. Because we've seen Haaland, who I think we all agree is a magnificent, pretty complete striker. He's gone through a couple dry spells this year. He's not 38 years old. He's going to have more stretches like he had at the beginning of the season. De Bruyne is looking, honestly, quite a bit better as into games as he gets his fitness up. These guys that we're seeing play out of position and wondering why they don't look at their best, whether it be Silva or Gundogan. Well, guess what? Once they're in a little bit more advanced position. So, yes, it is all about Man City. And whether they can get a Zubamendi or someone else that can, to me, this is the answer. Pay a lot of money for someone who can do what Rodri does, but then next year can be an 8. Can do what Gundogan does, but is capable of doing the Rodri job. And honestly, not to make it all about one guy, Zubamendi might be that guy.
He might be. And Andy, I think we have to obviously put a caveat to all of this, is that the charges, the hearing around Man City, the kind of announcement or verdict on that is expected right around, early January. That's what, all the signs are pointing towards. So could be interesting in terms of the situation in the short term and long term for City. And hey, if I'm a player, they're going to pay me a lot of money. It's going to be great long term, but in the short term, do I want to be maybe not in the Premier League, maybe not in the Champions League? It's one of those factors to consider, right? But Nick brings up a great point. Rodri replacement is key, but also defensively, right? I think we've seen quite consistently some of the players there, fitness-wise, just are kind of broken a little bit, and they need to maybe double down and bring in 2 or 3 new defenders just to give everybody a lift and say, hey, I think the forwards especially are like, we can't do it all on our own, and we need some help. And also, one final point, Haaland, really the backup situation to him, not replacing Julian Alvarez, was just a big problem for me. But City is the focus.
I wonder if maybe an injured player or two was supposed to maybe factor into that situation, backing up Haaland this season, because they've had injuries all over the field. But you're right, defensively, you can't count on John Stones to be fit all the time. Can't count on Ruben Diaz. Nathan Ake is here and there when it comes to fitness. Manuel Akanji has had a handful of injuries since he's been at the club. And so it's not just the Rodri position. I think that's maybe something that is getting glossed over just a little bit by some people, is it's a complete defensive, injury list and just breakdown for City this season. And that's where the control for Pep's teams always come from, is that bit right in front of the goalkeeper, the center backs and the defensive midfielder. They're going to bring the ball up. They're going to keep us safe. They're going to keep us in possession. They're going to do all of those things. And when you don't have really any of those players, the season kind of goes the direction it is. And so I kind of wonder if they just almost not do nothing in January, but not write the season off. But Nick's right, to sign someone for that position this season, then what happens next season? There aren't that many players in the world that can play multiple positions at the level that City need. And so I wonder if they almost just stand pat in January.
So here's the other thing I would just throw out there, not to make this all about City, but what about out clauses? We see this in, if you're going to get relegated, then this is the clause, or that's one of the things I think. And again, not to put it all on them, but there have been talks about Man United, right, having to sell in order to move. Spurs have made some big moves that I just think the team that could trigger everyone else to look around a bit is Man City in what we've called it, that revenge bleep tour where he says, you know what? I'm going to be here if we go down to the National League, but guess what? We're not in the National League now. So look out for us.
Do you think, like Nick, like Liverpool, the position they're in, I look at them and I don't think there's an obvious area that they really need to strengthen. So like it's kind of, if a great deal comes up and they really want to sign a guy, that makes sense. But it doesn't seem like they're going to make a move. And Arsenal, I guess the only other, again, the perennial question with them is the number 9. Like Gabriel Jesus just hasn't worked out as we all thought it would. If Dusan Vlahovic becomes available, as they've been linked with, do they go for someone like that, a kind of totally different option to Havertz? But yeah, it's at the top of the table. It's the most intriguing, right? I think for Liverpool and Arsenal to either A, really keep yourself ahead of everyone, or B, elevate yourself to be not just in the title race, but become title favourites by doing good business in January.
Yes, some of these players that we knew were magnificent, but take some time to earn the trust of their manager for whatever reason. It's been the perfect storm at Liverpool. We all knew from watching the World Cup, even against the U.S., how good Cody Gakpo was. Gravenberch was one of the names in the transfer window rumor mill for 2 years. And it just so happened, and I'm not, let's not just make this about being Dutch, but Slot comes in and immediately, I mean, you could have watched the first couple of games of Gakpo in that system when he was getting 17, 18 minutes and be like, wow, he's going to get in there. And now all of a sudden you have Diaz, who isn't starting every game, Nunez, who's fighting for a spot. And this is all before the transfer ad they're going to get whenever Jota's healthy again. So honestly, I don't know what Man United can do. Arsenal, the Vlahovic thing is interesting because I think maybe they could do one of those things where Gabby Jesus could be a swap, right? And help bring the cost down if they've decided he's not good enough. But Chelsea shouldn't do anything. Watch them buy 7 players. Right. But yeah, this is, you just make some really good points there. I don't know that there has to be a domino to fall. And that's why I keep pointing to Man City. There has to be somebody who makes the other team scared, because most teams I don't think are going to do that.
Andy, Tottenham, what's your thoughts? Because most people would say they need to strengthen a little bit, and that's where the issues have been for Ange Postecoglou's side.
Yeah, I agree. They need depth. They need someone that can push the starting lineup and can create depth in the 12 to 15 positions in the squad. Players that are regularly going to be into the lineup and in that rotation, because right now they're at a point due to injuries, a lot of it, and that's unforeseen. Partially, I mean, the way they play, I think, lends itself to some of that. But they need some help in the midfield. I think Rodrigo Bentancur is a really good player. Just doesn't fit the intense physical style that Ange wants to play, where players are running a lot, not his strong suit. And so basically the entire team is being held together by Pap Matar Sarr being healthy and fit and doing a two-way midfield job, because otherwise you can't play Madison and Kulusevski together. We've learned that you can't play Kulusevski without, Madison without Sarr next to him, because the defensive work just doesn't get done there in the midfield and they get overrun. And so it's a really imbalanced squad that you're not going to balance in January. But I think you can help yourself out a little bit by bringing in another Sarr-like player in the midfield, just to give yourself some options and a little bit of depth at this point, because, as we know, where they're sitting in terms of goal difference and some of the performances that they've put in this season, they should be much higher in the table than 11th.
Andy, take the big teams for a second, right? Let's look at the performances of the big teams. A player like Bruno Fernandes or James Maddison right now, they need that structure behind them. And as we see City slipping off with Rodri and out of the equation, now look who's at the top. Gravenberch is holding things together. Chelsea have 25 world-class. They're playing Caicedo at right back at times because they're so these teams, and not to mention what we see when Rice and Odegaard are out there together. You need someone like Sarr and even Basuma at times, and we're seeing you can be as flair as you want in that position, Joe. You better have someone behind you.
No, it's true. And I'm looking at some other teams that need to do business, like Bournemouth. They're in a great position. Can they strengthen somehow just to have the best season in club history and qualify for Europe? Because there's that carrot dangling for like them, Brentford, Nottingham Forest, Brighton, even. And again, a lot of these teams have big squads and players there. But if there's opportunities there in January, it feels like they're going to make a move. And then Wolverhampton Wanderers as well, given their situation, Saints at the bottom as well. It's going to be interesting to see the amount of moves teams down the bottom are going to make, I think, to try and stay in the Premier League and stay ahead. And some names I'm just chucking out there. Matthias Cunha has been excellent for Wolves. Does a big team go in for him, given their situation, struggling at the bottom. Brian Mbuemo, I don't think he's going to leave Brentford, but obviously he's been linked with so many big teams, and if he doesn't go in January, then the summer's going to be interesting for him. Yeah. And even a couple of guys like Marcus Rashford, noises around him at Man United, his history of being linked with moves away in recent seasons, that kind of talk is flaring up again. He might be someone to keep an eye on with Ruben Amorim coming in. And I don't know, Ben Chilwell, just going to chuck him out there, just kind of forgotten about at Chelsea. But left back, very specialist position. Yeah. Even someone like Man City kind of need defenders, need players who are good on the ball, left back. I don't know, just chucking that name out there. But it's going to be a lot of movement, I feel like, in January, guys. Like we said, so tight up and down the Premier League table that all of these teams are going to just try and find 1%, 2% to get better. And usually that means signing at least one or two players in this window and having a bit of a gamble. So head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com. We'll have predictions, transfer needs, daily updates throughout the January window on who's doing what business. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. And it's going to be chaotic. We can guarantee that.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host of NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And if you want even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock.